Fandom. The fans of a particular person, team, fictional series, etc., regarded collectively as a community or subculture. Fandoms are prevalent everywhere in society. Any collective of fans you may know is considered a fandom. As previously stated, there are multiple types of fandoms, bigger, smaller, or right down the middle. With fandoms come a mix of different types of people with different personalities and traits, different ideas and goals, and different likes and dislikes. When I thought about this video idea a week or so ago, I did not know how I wanted to attack this topic. There are various corners of the internet that I am personally not a part of. Therefore, I feel as though I can't speak on them. There are fandoms that I would love to talk about, but I'm afraid that I'll sound insensitive, offensive, or ignorant. There are fandoms that I can go into extreme detail about. The variety of fandoms made this idea hard to bring into fruition, but after taking some time to think about it, I came up with an idea that will allow me to not sound stupid, but to get my point across. I want to draw from my personal experience, whether it be with fandoms that I'm a part of, or fandoms that I personally have had run-ins with. I'm not going to talk about fandoms that I'm not a part of. I don't want to talk about people who I've only observed, as I feel it wouldn't be fair to those fandoms if I did so. Hopefully, by the end of this video, you'll be able to understand how I feel about different types of fandoms, and maybe you'll take home a little something for yourself. This is the Fandom Spectrum. These are fandoms that I have much to say about. Most of my comments are just praise for them. I want to specifically highlight Dragon Quest fans and The World Ends With You fans. These two fandoms, from my experience, have been so welcoming. Granted, there might be a bad egg or two in there from time to time, but I personally have yet to experience that. Seeing different types of discussions for their respective games, and the passion and love that oozes from these discussions are truly incredible sights. While it does also help that the games are good, these fandoms love everything about their games and want as many people to play them as possible. And it's why I'm not scared to say that I'm a fan of these franchises. The same can be said about the fandom behind 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. This is absolutely a smaller fandom for a game that most people unfortunately haven't heard of. And while I have run into some bad eggs, it's not enough to deter for the fandom itself. 99% of the 13 Sentinels fans just want you to play the game. This is a fandom where, given the context of the game, conversation is absolutely encouraged and recommended, and the fact that for the most part these conversations can be had without any issues is a testament to how amazing of a fandom 13 Sentinels has and how amazing of a game 13 Sentinels is. It's fandoms like these that make me happy that the internet exists and that I live in an era where I can be part of these conversations and these communities. Please go play 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. It's a top 5 game for me, and I promise you'll love it. The way I describe middle point fandoms are fandoms that have good and bad people, but the bad people are a little more noticeable, and it's always for something very, very stupid. These fandoms are, for the most part, cool and reserved, but are able to start an argument over the pettiest of issues. Some of my experience with these fandoms comes from franchises with a multitude of entries, and with that comes multiple starting points. The question of where should I start is as old as time, and as people have their own free will and their own thoughts and opinions, one person may have a different idea than another. There are 3 fandoms that I am a part of that have this issue, and every time the conversation is had, it's made to be more of a big deal than it should be. One of the 3, the Fate fandom, is the one I have the least experience with. Granted, with how confusing of a timeline Fate has, it's no wonder the question of a starting point and even a watch guide is frequently brought up. With that being said, however, there's no reason why people need to be so angry about it, nor is there a reason for people to bash others that they didn't start where you started. If you want my opinion, I personally believe that you should start with Fate Zero or Fate Unlimited Blade Works. Doesn't matter which one, they both spoil each other regardless, and because there's no context to it, you probably won't even understand that you're being spoiled to begin with. After that, figure it out. Figure it out for yourself. Whether you want to keep watching the mainline adaptations, the spin-offs, or go back and play the games, that's fine. Even if you don't want to start with those 2 specifically and your gateway is something else, that is completely okay. Don't let people talk down to you because you didn't start at the recommended starting point. That's not what anyone should be doing. It should be about the experience as a whole. If anything, we should be glad people are getting into the series to begin with. The same could be said about the Kingdom Hearts and Trails fandoms. I've been a Trails fan since late last year, and in that time frame I have noticed that these arguments even occur in this community. In fact, there was some controversy recently regarding the release of Trails to Daybreak, which comes out about 3 weeks from now as I'm recording this, and people arguing whether that's the perfect jump-in point. Personally, I don't think it is, but I completely understand why some people will want to jump in there. To add my 2 cents, I would personally recommend starting with Cold Steel 1, as it's the game that got me into it. If you start with Sky FC first, that's great, as is the first game in the series, and realistically it should be started first. However, me personally, I don't think I'd be a Trails fan if I started FC first. As long as you don't start with a game that's in the middle of the arc like Sky SC or Azure, Cold Steel 2 and whatnot, I think you will be okay. You will be fine. There are some games that I personally wouldn't recommend to start with, such as Trails from Zero or Trails Through Daybreak, but I'm not going to judge you for it. At the end of the day, it's your decision and your experience, and regardless, you're hopping into a phenomenal experience. Then for Kingdom Hearts, I've noticed these arguments aren't as frequent as they used to be. I personally played it in release order, but if you want to, you could play it in chronological order. It's not the timeline that's confusing, but rather the events that take place in the game itself. The release order arguments bring down fandoms that are amazing overall. We should just be glad that people are playing these games to begin with, especially Trails fans. Nobody plays our games, it is so unfortunate. The last 2 fandoms I want to cover in this section are fandoms that don't have the same release order argument, but other tiny arguments that bring it down. PlayStation fans can absolutely be a little try-hardy, like elitist at times, and the amount of times I have seen Sonic fans argue over quills is, not gonna lie to you, kind of embarrassing. And being a Sonic fan myself, I'm sure other Sonic fans would agree. That being said, I still think all these fandoms have a lot of good. Some of these fandoms are where their sense of community shines the brightest, and it's overall a fun time and a fun group to discuss the games that you loved with. I'm not really sure how to approach these 2 specific fandoms without getting myself in trouble in various ways. I will say that a lot of people in these fandoms are cool, chill, and overall great people to speak with. However, these fandoms have some pretty bad reputations, and for a good reason. To start, My Hero Academia. Listen, I really enjoy My Hero Academia. I will admit it has been a while since I've read it, the last time being around chapter 400 or so. I think a lot of my issues with the fandom come from toxicity and shippers. If I'm being honest, even as a person who is just coming out of high school, if you're over the age of 18 and are shipping high schoolers and creating fetish content of them, that's weird. There's no getting around that. It always has been. That's a personal stance, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people can get behind that. It's weird in every situation regardless. Then on top of that, when you do say something about a ship or something from the show or manga for that matter, people tend to get very, very angry over it. It doesn't help that one of the translators was run off of Twitter by My Hero Academia fans. Now, I'm not saying every My Hero Academia fan is a weird one. I used to be one. I have friends who are still currently My Hero Academia fans. They are cool, but the vocal minority is very vocal to the point where it starts to paint these fandoms in a very bad light, which is unfortunate because there are a lot of good people who are passionate about this franchise. And as unfortunate as it is, considering that I love these games and the franchise as a whole, the same can be said for the Persona fandom. Now, when this script was being written, the information that came out about Midori took place an hour or 2 earlier. I thought I'd be done with this video a day or 2 later, but evidently that did not happen, given that this was about a week ago at this point. But it's things like this that can paint the community in a bad light, and as unfortunate as it is, it's for a good reason. Pretending to be a Japanese girl as a white man is crazy and creepy. The fact that multiple people, presumably white men, were behind this account makes it weirder. Then you pair that up with the same issues that the My Hero Academia fandom has, where people ship high schoolers, or in some cases shipping a high schooler with an adult. What makes that weirder is that you can actually romance the characters in the game. Like I said, it goes both ways, whether you decide to romance an adult or a high schooler. As someone who's played a lot of Persona games throughout middle school and even high school, even I can admit that it's an extremely weird situation regardless. And that some Persona fans aren't able to comprehend that for some reason. For example, The female protagonist of Persona 3, FemC as we'll be calling her, has a romance option where you can romance a character named Ken, coincidentally has my name. The problem is, in Persona 3, Ken is 10 years old. FemC is in high school. So many people go to bat for this character over that issue, saying stuff like it's optional and you control the buttons you press. You can say, oh, it's not canon, or it's optional, or you can control what you do. And while yes, that's absolutely true, that absolutely plays a part, the main issue is that regardless, it's still in the game, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be there at all. And the fact that some people can't understand that baffles me. All that to say, there are weird Persona fans. And while there are for sure great Persona fans who I love having conversations with and whose content I love watching, it's hard to ignore the minority who are genuine weirdos, if not idiots, which makes it hard at times to say that you're a Persona fan, even though I want to talk and discuss Persona. It's a series that's very near and dear to my heart. I do sincerely hope this changes in the future, but at this point in time, it's not looking likely, and honestly, sometimes I am scared to be a part of this fandom. The final fandom I'm going to talk about today is a fandom for a franchise that is very, very special to me. It's a franchise that has carried me through the past 4 years of my life, which for sure have been the worst years of my life due to a variety of different circumstances. It's my favorite video game franchise of all time. In fact, it's not just my favorite video game franchise, but my all-time favorite media franchise. I love this series, and I unfortunately had no clue where to put it, so I put it into its own little bubble. The Final Fantasy fandom has multiple different layers to it, whereas some fandoms such as Persona have like small amounts of sub-communities. Final Fantasy has like 30 different communities that come together under one banner, which makes it extremely hard to judge. On one hand, you have fans of Final Fantasy 4, 6, 9, and 10, which most people agree are top tier, if not really good Final Fantasy games, and are passionate about these specific games and just want people to play them. While they could be a tiny bit obnoxious about the fact, it comes from a place of love and wanting others to experience their favorite experiences. Speaking as someone who claims that Final Fantasy VI is the greatest game ever created, I suggest it to people all the time because I absolutely adore this game and want people to get into it. Then you get fans of games that are divisive in some way, shape, or form, such as Final Fantasy 8, 13, 15, and 16. I personally love Final Fantasy 16. It's my second favorite Final Fantasy game, and it's for that reason why I could never attack or get on the case of people who like the specific games that I just named. Me personally, I think Final Fantasy 13 has phenomenal things about it, like its combat, right? Final Fantasy 13's combat is amazing, but everything else outside of 13 too, because I actually think that game is pretty good, I'm not a fan of. And then I think 65% of Final Fantasy 15 is actually really good, but unfortunately, even while playing a Royal Edition, I felt as though a decent amount of the game was missing. And then I genuinely despise Final Fantasy 8, even though I understood what was going on and the gameplay and whatnot. I hated the combat systems, hated the stories, and I really did not like the characters. It was all so unremarkable to me. But being a fan of a seemingly controversial Final Fantasy game myself, I'm not going to attack people over saying one game is their favorite and one game isn't. That's not what I do. That's not what I like to do. Then you get the fandoms of rather unknown and lesser played games such as Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 5, and 11. You don't see these people often, but you gotta respect them for sticking by games that aren't as popular as others. Fans of the spin-off games such as Final Fantasy Tactics are so loyal, which is so unfortunate because Square refuses to make those games. Unless those Tactics leaks and rumors are true, Square refuses to make those games, which is crazy to me. After that, there's Final Fantasy 12 fans who I can never get a gauge on. I'm not sure what to really say about Final Fantasy 12 and its fans for some reasons. I can't seem to find a consistent opinion about the game. From the 60 hours I spent with it, I enjoyed it, but I was never compelled to beat it, and outside of my own opinion, I have zero idea of what people think about this game. That leaves us with two games left that I want to talk about. Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy XIV. Let's concentrate on Final Fantasy XIV really quickly. Like other games I've mentioned, I think a lot of these fans are cool and overall nice people. The issue is 14 fans overlap with normal MMO fans, and so it's hard to tell who you're talking to. Of course, you have the fans that are borderline cultists, and I'll get back to that when we talk about 7. But then you have fans that just love 14 as an MMO fan or love 14 as a Final Fantasy fan, which is completely fine. I'm glad that 14 is introducing new people to the franchise and it's compelling people who are already experienced in the franchise to play more. What annoys me is people who force opinions or criticism of Final Fantasy as a whole when they've only played 14, or people who make fun of certain things in 14 and call them stupid and childish, not realizing that a decent amount of that stuff in 14 is taken from the games that precede it and the games that proceed it, with it being a title that consistently gets updates. I'm fine with you having your opinion. That's your opinion. If I agree, then that's cool. If I disagree, then that's cool. Difference of opinion is what makes us human, and is one of the things that makes a fandom. Just don't force an opinion on me and try to make me think that it's a fact. The same idea could be applied to Final Fantasy VII fans. Once again, a whole lot of you guys are cool. As a person who really enjoys 7 and the compilation as a whole, a lot of you guys are nice to talk to. And I love talking about Final Fantasy VII. There's just been an influx of people that probably shouldn't own a phone. They probably shouldn't have internet. Between the shippers of the crazy variety and their strong opinions on relationships, making it hard to talk about certain characters without an argument happening. Poor Aerith fans, I'm one of you guys. I understand. I do get it. And then the people that send death threats to other people, creators, and even voice actors and developers because of a difference of opinion, it makes it hard to just have a nice conversation. Also, if you're a creator, don't be stupid. What I mean by that is, especially if you have previous experiences with these type of fans, I get that you love it and are passionate about it. I love talking about Final Fantasy VII myself, but at some point when you realize that one specific topic that you post about gets death threats, one would assume you would dial down on it a bit, not open yourself to getting more death threats and open yourself to being more emotional on the internet. Lastly, there was that Kate Sith pronunciation mess that occurred last year that led to people getting attacked and people trying to cancel others. I don't need to say that the entire thing was stupid, but I will. That entire thing was stupid, and it's because of the sheer contrast between fans like this and fans that aren't crazy that I can't figure out where to slot it in this video. Final Fantasy is inherently a humongous series with a variety of fans, and because there's so many of them, it didn't feel right to include them with the other franchises mentioned. As a die-hard Final Fantasy fan who gets excited for almost every new game, no matter what it is, seeing the diversity of fans, while I think is a massive weakness the fandom has, I also truly believe that is its biggest strength, and that's why through the best and worst, I enjoy being a Final Fantasy fan. My goal of this video was to illustrate an idea that I've always felt very strong about. This doesn't just apply to fandoms, but it applies to life in general. Don't judge a book by its cover. Don't judge people based on preconceived notions. People are different. We have different thoughts and ideas and motives, and that's what our society has been built upon. Be involved with who you want to be involved with, and separate yourself when you feel you need to. While there are people you might not want to associate yourself with in every town, city, state, country, and continent, there are people out there who want to talk to you. Fandom or not, there's somebody for everybody. Just because there are some bad eggs out there doesn't mean you should close yourself off. If you want to have a conversation about a topic, find someone. I'm sure they're just as willing to have a conversation with you as you are to them. As long as you're aware of what you're getting into, there's nothing to be afraid of. I think that's the beauty of fandoms and humanity as a whole. Thank you for watching.